everyone, this is Aparna, your community officer. I am here today with Mehrunissa one of our senior members of University EDI board, and she is the strategic lead of EDI Framework. Today we are here. This is going to be the last event of the Black History Month, and since the theme of this year is saluting our sisters, we are going to have an inspiring and motivational journey of our wonderful staff. So yeah, let's get started. I'm here with the first question. What are your thoughts on celebrating Black History Month?
Well, for me, Black History Month is a really important event, but it's actually more than an event. I think we celebrate Black History Month, but it's around how do we celebrate Black history across the year, I think, which is really important to me. And I think for me, it's around acknowledging, recognizing and celebrating the contribution of the Black community to UK society, and by that I mean education, civil society, music, any part of kind of contribution which makes the society really rich. But I think the other important element is around celebrating it from the perspective of really understanding the journey our Black colleagues have come from, their heritage, and to try and work through our own journey around how we kind of work as a really multicultural, pluralistic education group, but also as a society as a whole.
That's a wonderful answer, and I think I completely agree with celebrating them, not only the education just because we are in it, but then all the other areas as well. And yeah, that's a very wonderful answer. Second question, this year's national theme is saluting our sisters. Do you have anyone inspiring in your mind?
I mean, where do I choose? And there are so many inspiring Black women. But actually, saluting our sisters is really important from the context of where we are as a community and as a society. So for me, the first person that comes to mind is Mehrunissa, who was a nurse, but also, who ran businesses across. And she's not been recognized a lot in terms of kind of world sphere of people that really contributed. And for me, it's around her journeys very much reminds me of the Windrush generation of Black individuals that came here, how the nurses actually came to this country and what they've contributed to the National Health Service. It also coincides with the 75th year celebration of the National Health Service. So she's really, really, for me, is someone that I would really look at as a key role model. Mm-hmm. But the other people that come to mind is someone like Michelle Obama, and her whole advocacy around women's rights. And looking at kind of education and the transformation of education, and how education can really transform people. And then I want to also kind of think about, we are at Coventry University, and there's some really great leaders here, Black leaders, and some that come to mind are, I don't know if you know Fiona Secondina, she's the Deputy Director in our research services. You've got Maxine, who's one of the, I think she's an Associate Professor in our health and life sciences college. So these are really inspirational women who kind of can show that Black women can really climb up the ladder, and there is a real aspiration, but it's also about their contribution around I truly believe in lift as you climb up, and I think that's really an important element to it.
Yeah, I think I do agree with the fact about lifting others when you climb the ladder, and that's something which I think all students should look up to and work along.
Yeah.
The third question, could you tell us more about your personal journey, like your motivations, how your journey was?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time you got for me to kind of talk about personal journey. So the first thing is I actually was born in Kenya, in Nairobi. I was brought up in Nairobi. I transitioned and came to the UK with my mom and my siblings. And partly because of the colonial times when it had been colonized, a lot of them were encouraged to take on British citizenship, and she still had it, and we were at a cusp of that moment in Kenya where she either had to give it up and take Kenyan citizenship, which we all had, or she needed to get out of the country. And she made a decision around what would be the best, particularly she had all girls, around education. And how do you transform, and she actually took the journey here. So she's been a real inspiration for me in terms of coming here. So that's been my journey. And then I kind of obviously was educated here. I did my kind of sixth form, my university. And interestingly, it's around that whole aspect around where do you want to go as a young person. And I really wanted to think, one of the things I always wanted to do was be a lawyer. And I did manage to do that because I walked out of my law exam, second exam. It was really interesting. But I leave that journey there, and then I went on to do my master's, and I did a professional qualification in youth and community, and I did my second master's as well at that point. And so my journey took me to work with people with mental health issues, and that's where my journey started from an employment perspective. And then from then on, I worked in the wider public sector across 3 local government organisations. I did 3 years at the prison service as their national diversity training advisor. And then my kind of final few years in terms of what I would call the full-time employment aspect, I became the head of EDI at the Law Society. Interestingly, how things go around, you start where you aspire to be and you now are actually working with lawyers. And then I spent my time with the Solicitors Regulation Authority when the split came from the membership and the other body. And at there, I then went through a couple of kind of different transitions and restructures. Ultimately became their Director for Inclusion with the portfolio on EDI, Consumer Affairs and Corporate Complaints. So I think my journey has kind of taken me all over. What I say is I really enjoy doing the challenge of having doing a range of sectors and making sure that actually to a certain extent you can have success in how you work. But for me, I think for my personal journey is the fact that you have to be extremely resilient. So as a woman, an Asian woman, a person of colour, whatever you want to call me, in that sense, I think I've always had to push at the door, and I've sometimes had to bang because you become invisible amongst everything, and you really need to fight your way. And I don't mean fight in an aggressive way, but I feel that I've had to work 2 or 3 times as hard as my colleagues have had to in order for me to be able to progress in my career. And I'll give you a really interesting example where some of the key projects were going to my colleagues when I was director, where I had to say to my CEO, actually, don't you see me? And it was a really interesting conversation. It was, I think, a really interesting educational point for him. A moment to just look at, and he hadn't even thought about it. He wasn't deliberately doing anything, but he hadn't thought, and I said, but I'm here and I bring a wider set of skills apart from what I could do, and I don't seem to be recognized. And I think that just literally so that's what I mean, is you have to constantly keep on. So when I left full-time employment, I thought, what do I do? And a lot of jobs that were coming up, they were very much around, you need to be here full-time. And I wanted the hybrid working, so that I can have that work-life balance, because I had carrying responsibilities as well. And interestingly, all those that said no, all of a sudden the pandemic hit and everybody's working from home. So how did that happen, in a sense? But I made a rational decision about my career, that I've never opened up a website or anything, and I've been very fortunate, and partly because probably the work I've done and the engagement that I had with my colleagues, that I was offered the opportunity to be a consultant, to do pieces of work, which is where my consultancy started. So I came here because I had done some transformation work at another university around EDI, and so I was approached. And one of the things that we were talking about is what does that transformation look like? It was transforming the EDI culture here, because for me EDI isn't just ticking a box in compliance. It is really, really transforming the culture. It's around making sure it's built into the fabric of Coventry University Group, because my role is across staff and students, and it's across the group as well. So, my journey's been really quite interesting in a sense.
Yeah. And I also think that, you being on the EDI committee, so the first time when I entered the board meeting, I think yours was the first friendly face, and
wow.
I could actually. So I think you are a good bridge between the staff and the student representative. It's like me or Jack, we feel so connected with you, and we are okay to share. What is our voice, what are our students thinking. So I think you're very good to our university and the EDI board.
Aparna, that's really generous and kind, but actually that's really assuring for me, because that's what I want to try and do, is to bridge that gap. And I think it's really important around partnership with kind of the Students' Union, but you as students, because we are here, because you are here. Absolutely, and so I think it's really important that not only our staff have a really good experience, or that our staff feel that they have a sense of belonging, but our students feel the same.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Fourth question, could you tell us more about your role in the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Committee, and what is the university doing to reach out to the students?
Okay, so I think my role there, because of the kind of governance structure, we've got the staff networks, we've got thematic councils, and then we've got entity-based councils, and then we've got the key council, which is a strategic council, which you're a member of. And I think my role there is one that is facilitating and supporting. It's making sure that actually that council works in a manner that is looking at all the strategic themes that are emerging, both in terms of concerns coming from the council, that we're able to flagship some of the really great best practice that might not be happening in the academic side of things, and I'm not saying that they don't, but they may be in some of our sister companies. Or it could be at one of our other campuses. And how do we kind of flagship that and then think about as a council whether these are worth scaling up? It's, the role is around making sure that, that the council has sight of the annual report, the usual bits that we do, to make sure that we are compliant not only with the Equality Act and the public sector duty, but that we are going in the extra mile to create a really inclusive culture within the university. And as you know, that EDIC, as we call it, is chaired by the provost, Ian Dunn.
Yeah.
So it's got support and it's got advocacy right at the top.
Yeah.
And Maggie, as our Chief People Officer, also sits on that. And I'm really pleased that actually that we're going to be amplifying the student voice.
Yeah.
And the last meeting that we had was a really good meeting. In terms of, I think students managed to kind of get through what were the concerns that they had. But also I think in terms of receiving some advice about where they go and how they navigate some of those challenges, I think is really key.
Yeah. And the meeting was really good in terms of them listening to our concerns, which I really liked. The part where they addressed each and every aspect of the report that I made, and even our community engagement lead for LGBTQI chat. I really like that part as well. So yeah, it was a good meeting.
It is, and I think one of the things EDIC is going to do is it's going to have the responsibility for monitoring progress with our strategic framework and action plan. So I think it's going to be really key, and it's there, and it's providing that balance between staff and students as well.
I think that's interesting. The fifth question: what do you believe or should be the core objectives to achieve an inclusive organizational culture?
Okay, for me, I think there's a core objective which is being very clear that creating an inclusive culture is a responsibility of each one of us. It starts with the leadership in terms of setting the tone through their behaviors, through their advocacy, but then it trickles down to all of us as staff members, including myself as the EDI strategic lead, and students. Because it's about respecting each other. Yeah. We may not agree all the time, we come from different value bases, but it's about finding a common ground. And actually it's about humanity, it's about treating each other with respect and with dignity, and creating a safe environment for us to be ourselves, and to have a voice and be listened to, and that it matters even if we disagree.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The sixth question: so could you share your knowledge of global majority population, which is BAME, at Coventry University?
Okay, so I obviously started here just about a year ago, and it's quite interesting in terms of particularly where Coventry is located. So you're talking about in the West Midlands, which is a very thriving and quite a diverse area. And if you look at we're talking about our global majority population. So if I look at Birmingham is 53% BAME, or global majority in a sense. In terms of Coventry, in terms of data and where we are kind of situated, I think it's probably less than that, but it's still a really good, huge number. It's a good number. And I don't have the exact data on that student number in terms of BAME, but if I look around and I go to the hub, we've really changed. So we've got we are one of the key universities that got intake internationally. And if I look around, the most of those international students either come from South Asian countries or they come from the African countries.
Yeah.
So I think that we probably as a university have a really high percentage of the global majority population in terms of students.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because I myself am from that community. So yeah. So last question: share one piece of your advice for our upcoming students.
That's really interesting. one piece of advice. So one piece of advice I would give them is use the opportunity that you have to really transform yourselves, you know, in terms of your life, through knowledge that you're going to gain, through independent thinking, and then go out and really transform your communities and society for the better.
True. Wow, that was so amazing. I mean, I think students should get that message of using your opportunity, because not everybody gets the opportunity to come abroad, study in terms of international, and home students just the opportunity to get the education, the university level education, I mean. So yeah, that was a very good advice. And do you want to add on?
And I think the other piece of advice I would give is, if you're struggling and you're having some challenges, please speak up. Go to the Students' Union, speak to somebody, talk to me, you know, and we might not have all the answers, but don't sit there and actually do this yourself. You know, that's really important, because it is a struggle both for probably students who are, you know, here from the UK, but more so for our colleagues from international.
Yeah, that's a wonderful piece of advice. Thank you for joining us today, Mehrunissa.
It's been a pleasure, Aparna.
We hope you enjoyed this conversation. To see more content on Black History Month, please visit our website. Bye.